Welcome. My name is John Valastro with CEI Engineering, and we are glad you could join us for our second webinar. Our series, Building Athletic Facilities, How You Cannot Go from A to E Without Checking Boxes B, C, and D. This three-part series covers the 5 major phases of an athletic construction project. I'm here today with Jeff Bresee. He is our lead engineer on our sports facility team, and today he will be covering 2 very important phases. Welcome, Jeff.
How you doing, John?
Remember, communication is critical throughout the construction process. Checks and balances will keep your project on schedule and on budget. So, Jeff, how does the engineer help here?
Well, that's what these webinars are about, the role of the engineer. Usually people know what the owner does, know what the contractor does. What does the engineer do? We want to educate you. And we talked last week about those roles, and that's the A through E: planning, budgeting, design, permitting, procurement assistant, and construction management. We're experts that help all the way from A to E. And today I want to focus on design and permitting. Last week we talked at length about planning and budgeting. Today I want to talk about design and permitting, and I guess design being the first.
Well, now, as we move into the design phase, know that your vision will begin to take shape down to the minute details, the schematic. So stay involved. Jeff, how often do we see changes in schematics?
We see them as many times as they're needed. It depends on, I guess, how well it's planned. And so I'm starting on a slide here that ends where last week left off. This is the concept site plan for a new high school athletic facilities in Canyon, Texas, that we just finished up not long ago. And we made sure everything is where they wanted it's going to work. And as long as we planned good, well, then I don't have to worry so much about changes. It's easy at this point of the game when there's one drawing if you want to change and slide things around. But the ultimate goal is we have to get down to extreme detail, to the finest detail on every little thing. So let me show you an example of what I mean by that. And so when changes happen, they can be very costly if you've kind of waited till the end to make the changes, because by then, instead of one sheet, there might be a whole stack of drawings showing what you want to do. And if you got to change, then you got to change them all. Planning and budgeting, I'll give one more kick for it. Do it very well, and then the design process will be smooth. And the design process is a very lengthy, very detailed process. You're looking at one sheet from one of those facilities. That had baseball, softball, tennis, track and field, you name it, it's grass fields. I chose this one just because it kind of gives a good example. For every facility and for each layer of the facilities, we have to go and put an extreme amount of detail down, full detail as to what's expected and how to build it. So you can see there's a lot of lines on this sheet and a lot of notes to be considered.
Again, this looks like Greek to most school administrators and athletic directors. And we get lost. I know I did when we were starting this project. When it comes to water tables, elevations, topography, soil type, base, utilities, easements, it just gets very confusing. And so, again, this is where we feel like the engineer is the expert, and we have to rely heavily on you guys.
Well, and you do. That's what our expertise is. That's what our profession is to be an expert who understands all the complexities and then have a means of clearly identifying those layers of complexities into layers of drawings. This is just the grading and drainage sheet of this particular item. This particular item, this track and field, has 8 or 9 sheets with all the different layers, and each one dealing with its specific thing. There's a demolition plan, there's an earthwork plan, there's a utilities plan, there's the grading and drainage plan, there's a surfacing plan, et cetera, et cetera. That's what it takes to make sure your drawing has all the detail covered. So that's why you see when all these lines mean something to a contractor. Each one of those lines tells him exactly what you are asking him to do, what quantity to use, what things to use, so he can give you very concise pricing, competitive pricing, When you're going through permitting, they don't have to ask questions and go on and on and on trying to figure out what you're even doing. You can just move through that process quickly. And when you're building it, everyone has the exact same guideline to be guiding what's going to be constructed without questions and ambiguity. It also, the detail is so important that you don't miss anything, because we get back to those changes. If you wait till the time of construction for those changes to hit the door, the time it takes and the money it takes just goes skyrocketing, and it can just make a project turn into a disaster. So from planning, these drawings, the detail, if they're right during planning, then that's going to be smooth during design. If we're detailed and we're thorough in design, everything else is going to be smooth as well, and everything stays on time, on budget, good quality, everybody's happy.
When we talk about the goals, last week we talked about planning. And so, we discussed having safe and adequate facilities. Now we're adding on top of that building to code, permitting, and specifications. You want few surprises to prevent that skyrocketing you mentioned, and the loss of time. So this is Jeff, highlight the importance here.
Well, there you go. These goals are all laid out there pretty clearly. What a thorough design makes sure you get everything shown here. You get it done right, and you get it done without any issues from the county, the city, anybody. And it's something that's going to last. You take away ambiguity, and when you do that, you're covering the school's interest, which I put in that next bullet. The school keeps that quality control in their hands, because they were the ones in charge of working with the engineer to put the drawings and the specs together. Well, now it guides everything. If there's any problems that come up, you can always just turn to the paper. Well, what's in the plans, what's in the specs, and clarify every issue as they come along. And then that reduction of ambiguity also enables the permitting body, whether it's the city, county, whoever. If you go into them very vague, well, all they can do is sit and ask you questions forever and ever and ever until they finally get out of you enough to know what you're doing and whether they're okay with it or not. That can make a permitting process go from lasting 1 month to lasting 6 or 7. You don't want that. You want to be able to be clean and concise, so you go through that whole process and get your permit and get ready to go out to bid, without any issues. It helps you when you go to bid. I can't, as a contractor, give you a precise price unless I know precisely what you're asking me for. When you have ambiguity in a set of plans, a contractor either doesn't know and will put a low price in, looking to take advantage of that situation, and then when we get into construction, he'll just ask for change order after change order after change order. Or if he doesn't know what you're actually asking for, well, then all I can do is cover his rear end and put a lot of money in there for the what he doesn't know, the what ifs. Either way, it results in a bad price for a project. The concise drawings and the clarity of the drawings enables everyone to give exact apples to apples pricing. When you get prices from different bidders, you know that they're all giving you the exact same thing. You don't have to worry about what that price represents. So it's
those are the specs, right, Jeff? Everything is.
Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but yeah, it's everything together. It's the plans, the specs. They have to come together to answer all questions and remove all ambiguity. So, and then the same thing during construction. Well, day in and day out, people building things have to have something to turn to, a set of plans, a set of specs, so they know what they got to do. So again, if those are right from start to finish, everything else is smooth and efficient. It's tied into everything. So then I guess the next thing I wanted to cover is, well, how do you do this? What if you're to ask me, Jeff, what do you need? Here's a list of what is required for design. You can see we need a topographic survey, we need a geotechnical report. We're going to use that information that comes from those things to do a lot of calculating. That's what engineers do. We have to do a lot of analysis. Stormwater is a good example of that. And that is all that goes together, and all that pours down into these drawings. The notes on the drawings, what's drawn on the drawings, they come together into blueprints that everybody can look at. But what that does is it eventually points towards the specifications. The specifications are the most detailed part of the entire design. If I've got on drawings, let's say a track that I know is going to use some soil stabilization, it's going to use at base, it's going to use asphalt, it's going to use concrete, it's going to use track surface, it's going to have some fencing, going to have, whatever else it has, all the stuff it takes for the field events. Well, I don't know which thing you want me to buy. I don't know what kind of base. I don't know what kind of asphalt. I don't know, on and on and on. I could just keep asking questions and questions and questions about every individual item, and they would be valid questions. So the specifications are meant to answer even all of those questions. So you get a very big, large stack of paper on any of these projects, but it's just needed in order to answer all questions and put everything on that apples to apples basis that's going to cover you. And then it also gives us the ability to keep things regulated. One little example I put into the regulation side is a SWEP plan, or a stormwater pollution protection plan. You have to do this. Governments make you do things, and if you can't do them, they'll shut your project down. As engineers, we provide these things, work with the contractors to make sure they've got what it takes to keep the regulation up to date and compliant, and again, no issues. So that's kind of what that boils down to in design. Wanted to also cover today permitting, why we have some time.
When it comes to permitting, schools realize they're in a delicate relationship with, the city, the county, police, fire department. All these guys are going to have some say in your design, and that's why the permitting is it's doable, but it's a ton of work because everybody has their own little footprint. And so again, CEI has this expertise in permitting. And so go ahead, Jeff, I'll let you go.
Yeah, you kind of hit it there, but I would say, yeah, CEI, we're very expert in permitting. We do work nationwide, a lot of commercial, a lot of things other than just sports, to the tune of thousands and tens of thousands of jobs that we've permitted across the nation. And so we apply that expertise to help our sports team as well to get through this. It used to be the first 10 years I did these. I've been about 20 years now designing fields and sports facilities. First 10, very few times did the city require us to permit. To this day, it's not nearly as required as everything else, because everything else in the world that gets built gets permitted 100% of the time. But I'll bet at least 50, 60, 70% of the time now. It's climbing more and more each year that the requirements of these cities are that, yes, we do want to see your plans. Yes, we do want to go through the permitting process. And so that expertise we have, brings it all together. And how long does it take? Well, if you're good, it can take as little as a month, maybe 2 or 3, just depends on the city. Other places can be much longer. I'm going to give a little example here. My example project is in a place where nobody gets a permit in less than about a year. It's very famous for that, and that would be Austin, Texas. And we were hired by Lake Travis ISD to do 4 different schools that each wanted a track and a synthetic turf field, whether it was new or renovating what they already had, one way or the other. There was a project there. Well, these 4 schools each fell in 4 different cities. It would have been nice if they were all in Austin. No, there was one in Austin, one in Bee Cave, one in Lakeway, and one in unincorporated Travis County. So we had to deal with all 4 of those, go through 4 different processes, one for each field. They all were kind of interconnected and all kind of looked to each other as to whether they were going to permit these or not. We even had a water district and a river district in there. And at that time, Austin, the people down there, and particularly with Travis County, they were saying, hold on, time out. I know there's a lot of fields in our area that have gone down, and we are very worried that this is getting out of control, and we're letting stuff happen that maybe is going to be harmful to the environment or to the communities without us being able to thoroughly look into this. We are not going to give any more permits. To which we said, okay, well, what does that mean? And they said, well, we need to reevaluate this, and you're going to kind of help us. So in our situation, this came together as like a perfect storm of permitting that we knew was going to be quite a battle. But we were willing to sit down with them. That's all we could do. And let's just begin to reason and find out where the concerns are. Well, they, in their own evaluations and study of the industry, they had seen what it takes to do a turf field. And they came right at us from the beginning and said, we find turf to be an impervious surface. Impervious means, no, it's not like grass where some of the water goes down into the water table. All the water runs off. It's more like a parking lot. And we really couldn't argue with them. Yeah, when you do a turf field, to do it right, you compact the soil. You oftentimes put stabilizing layers down there. Very often there's a pond liner or that's meant to be impermeable. So it's hard to argue with them that that they're not right on that, and we didn't think we could do much with that argument. That argument meant, well, you have to then go build on each of these fields a new detention pond, or add to your detention ponds, build a new or add to your water quality ponds. And Lake Travis had no ability to do that. They're landlocked. We just couldn't do it. So this would have killed the project. And I realized the precedent across the state, if this becomes the precedent, this could shut a lot of projects down. It would add a whole lot more money to projects that are already quite pricey. So we just said, okay, how do we overcome this obstacle? Well, if you look at turf has a lot of crushed stone underneath it. In Texas, especially, and across the country, crushed limestone is put underneath the field, and it becomes a French drain to move the water under the field. In a normal situation where there's a detention pond and a quality pond, you have the ponds downstream of whatever it is you're draining the water from. We said to them, well, turf just happens to sit inherently on top of its own detention pond and its own quality pond. They said, what do you mean? We were able to say, well, that crushed stone is not just stone. We provided testing to them. Right here you see we provided a test. We did all the water calcs over here. This is a page from the stormwater report. Showed how much water we have to store, how much we got to deal with. Went and showed them how much air is in the rock down below and did the math, and we were able to show there is room underneath that field in that stone to have underground detention directly under the field. As long as we design it right, which we did. We designed it differently. You can't just do the normal thing when you're doing this, but with only a few tweaks to what has to be done, the field can provide its own underground detention, and that was approved. Well, that wasn't the whole obstacle. The next one was even a little tougher, and they were a little more dug in. They are in a very sensitive water table down there, the Edwards Aquifer, but just in general, we do not want these fields leaching heavy metals to the Texas storm waters and to our creeks and streams. Well, neither does anybody. And the reports that have been going on for years and years is that the rubber from these fields does leach this to the streams. Still never conclusive to the point you could say yes or no, but it's enough that it's still a concern. And given that it was a concern, we said, well, let's talk about resolving that concern. We went and did our own research, and were able to show that crushed limestone is one of the most effective means of removing heavy metals from waters, used in the mining industry, which is in a report we showed here, and many other industries. So we were able to go back and say that same thing, just like we did in stormwater detention. The field inherently has volume underneath it in the air to store the water and provide detention. Well, it also has that crushed stone in there to filter and give contact time with the water and leach the heavy metals back out of it and bring us well within compliance. We actually, it took a while, but their reason was there, and that was approved on all accounts. All 4 fields were approved, and we were able to get past that. Did we design these the way we designed the fields? No, it has to be done differently. From what we did to the storm drain and how we release the water, how we control it, to the stone size and what's done in the trenches around the pipes. We had to be reasonable and do it a little bit differently, but it all still was stuff that could be done within the budget. And Lake Travis, those jobs were able to be built. So that's an example of a very long, detailed process, but it does set some precedent, and it does give us the ability to, I think, reason with others who might have the same concerns or likewise. But I hope it also shows that, with the engineering and the know-how and the knowledge, and I guess with the right tools, you can overcome any obstacle, I think, in these jobs, and find these solutions and get the permits done where we're getting what the school needs and still getting it right, where it's going to be serviceable and long-lasting to them, while at the same time fitting with the community, meeting their needs, and protecting the environment and everything else involved.
Well, one thing I'd like to, kind of close with is, any project of this magnitude, you're going to have an engineer on project. And I've always said engineers never increase the cost of a project, but they sure can save you money, headaches, and time. And as you can see, CEI has a lot of expertise. They've done it for many years. Sports facilities engineering is not really new, but it's in high demand. And again, I think we have some expertise that will help anybody out there, especially school districts. So
Yeah.
we hope you guys found today's information helpful, and you will join us for our third webinar dealing with procurement and construction management next. This will bring together the 5 phases of building athletic facilities. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact Jeff or myself. And so until next time, stay safe.